Hello and welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, where we turn today's current affairs into clear, exam-ready insights for UPSC examination. It's May 15th, 2026, and today's edition brings you two important analysis articles for your mains preparation. First, why India banned sugar exports. We will understand the interplay of food security, inflation management, ethanol policy, and global market dynamics. Second, we will have a look into the recent AI-focused global capability centers versus the traditional IT services in India. And we will examine how artificial intelligence is reshaping India's outsourcing and technology landscape. Finally, we will be wrapping up with prelims pointers which are highly crucial for your upcoming prelims examination on May 24th, 2026. So let's begin with the very first topic, which is focused on the export ban of sugar. So recently, as of yesterday, the Directorate General of Foreign Trade has kept in mind that there are so many conflicts which are going on in the world and also related to climate change. So that is why we have tried to move the export of sugar from the restricted category to that of a prohibited category. This means that despite India being the second largest exporter of sugar in the entire world, we have taken this major decision to ban as of now, keeping in mind some of the reasons which are undergoing in the entire world and also in the country. So let us understand this from a very simple perspective of GS1 and GS3. Firstly, there is a typographic mistake here. GS1 and this topic has a link with geography and climate change. And when we talk about GS3, we have the topics of agriculture and economy. So from those broad perspectives, we will be trying to analyze in detail. But first, let us start with the very basics from prelims perspective. So when we talk about the cultivation of the crop of sugar, we have to understand that we do not only get sugar from sugarcane, we also get the same from sugar, beet and various other crops. But when we talk about the major source of sugar, that comes from sugarcane, which is actually a form of a grass, right? Now, from the planting to the harvesting stage, sugarcane crop requires heavy intensive water and also high amount of fertilizers. So that is why, we have to understand that in various parts of the country, for example, in the states of Uttar Pradesh, which is accounting for around 40% of the national sugar output, to the states of Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, the crop of sugarcane and its cultivation is a major source of livelihood for around 5 crore farmers in the country. We have to keep in mind that India is the largest producer and the consumer of sugar in the entire world. It is also the second largest agro-based industry just after cotton. So this means that sugarcane is not only important for our daily consumption, but also is a source of major livelihood for the entire country. It is so important that it is also included as one item under the Essential Commodities Act of 1955. In fact, when we talk about the minimum support price, sugarcane is not included within MSP, but sugarcane has a fair and remunerative price. This means that the fair and remunerative price is a statutory price. It is backed by law. It almost has the same provisions like MSP. That means that the sugarcane farmers are kind of assured a certain price based on a particular law. So this means that the export, the consumption, the distribution, the production of sugar is actually heavily regulated based on its economic importance. Also, when we talk about the major bodies in India which is trying to regulate the sugar exports, firstly, we have to keep in mind that the Directorate General of Foreign Trade is the apex body which is trying to regulate the sugar exports. So when we talk about the various bans and the restrictions of sugar exports, the DGFT is the main body. And when we talk about the distribution of sugar in the country itself, it is the Department of Food and Public Distribution which takes care of the same. Now, let us look at some of the PYQs. From 2020 to 2013, we have so many PYQs. Firstly, if you look at this one, this kind of will be using a lot of your common sense. Now, if you look at the various statements in this particular question, it is trying to state, especially in statement number 2 and 3, that a single sugarcane settling or sapling will be much more resistant as compared to more multiple settlings. Now, can we use our common sense and read these 4 statements and try to answer in the comments below? Also, in 2013, they have asked regarding the various byproducts of sugarcane production and distribution. So let us also try to solve this question in the comments below, because recently the topic of National Biofuels Policy also have been covered in the Analyst before, where we had discussed the various basics of the same. So let me know the answers in the comments. Now let us actually go on to the main policy impacts. Firstly, when we talk about the exports of various items, right? Now, India has the DGFT as a nodal body for regulating the major agricultural commodities and various other commodities too. So based on that, we have several categories. For example, firstly, we have the free category. That means that items such as manufactured goods or software products, which are actually exported from India to abroad, they are actually not having any restrictions or any other kind of duties or tariffs on them. But when we talk about some important items which can be important for our domestic consumptions, the DGFT can try to regulate the export to actually make the domestic supply more easily available. For example, if sugar was earlier in the restricted category, it required various licenses, permissions for export. Right? Also, there is another kind of category known as canalized category. That means that if I am to export sugar to some other country, I would have to go through various Government of India or state government agencies only. That is, I have to actually ask for Government of India permissions. And at the end, if the Government of India sees that, okay, domestically, the sugar production is kind of stable, but the domestic consumption can be threatened, that is when we will be moving sugar into prohibited category, and that is where we will be trying to ban the export. That means no private player or party can try to export. We do not only have sugar in this category, we also have the various types of meat such as beef, where we talk about some specific types of cow or buffalo beef, which is totally prohibited too. So this means that there are so many crops and so many items which are also in this restricted prohibited category. But if the DGFT recently has tried to ban the export of sugar, why this decision has taken place in the very first direction is firstly the El Nino situation that we have to keep in mind. Right? Now, we all have recently read so many articles, so many news that El Nino is going to last till the end of 2026. Right? And we have also seen in the previous discussions that if we have an onset of El Nino, this can lead to more dry conditions over the Indian subcontinent and the regions in and surrounding India. This means that the lack of rainfall, right, and the onset of drought conditions is not beneficial for the crop of sugarcane. We have already seen how sugarcane is a very water intensive crop. We have also seen that how sugarcane requires almost 10 to 14 months to get ready. So that means that throughout this period of time, you will need good irrigation, you will need good amount of water supply. And if you understand already the condition of Indian agriculture, we are actually heavily dependent on monsoon and rainfall. So if there is a deficit in monsoon rainfall, definitely the Government of India right now will be very, very concerned. So that is why as of now, you can imagine that the Government of India has taken a preemptive decision. That means that the Government of India expects that due to El Nino, there can be a shortfall of rainfall, and that is why we have tried to ban this. Now, you know that this will be having an impact on the overall sugarcane cycle, right? Now, when we talk about this weak to moderate El Nino prediction, the government of India expects that the sugarcane cultivation which is going on right now will not be affected. But in the upcoming cycle, it can be affected heavily. That is, in the next sugarcane crop, it can be heavily be impacted. Now let us move on to the next reason why the government of India has imposed this ban. Now, the West Asian conflict is known to all of us. The broader impact on rupee stability and the various impacts are known to us. One of the main impacts is the less availability of crude oil in the near future because the Strait of Hormuz is blocked. So what the government of India is expecting, that due to the less availability of crude oil, the fertilizer sector can be impacted. Why? Because crude oil is a kind of a raw material for the fertilizer sector. In fact, most of the fertilizers such as urea, DAP, all of them are actually dependent directly and indirectly on the fossil fuel dependency that we have on the Middle Eastern countries, on countries such as Jordan. So that is why this can hit the impact. Also, if you see, as of now, India is paying 40% more for DAP. So you can understand that, okay, the fertilizer sector is actually impacted. But how sugar is coming into equation? Now all of you have also heard of the term known as ethanol, right? The E20, the E30, these are all the types of petrol which has been blended with ethanol, right? Now we all know that to manufacture ethanol, one of the simplest way to do the same is to use sugarcane and its byproducts such as molasses and the baxes, right? So this means that if we try to lessen the exports of sugar as of now and use it domestically to produce more ethanol, it can ease the burden of India to spend more on crude oil, right? And to be less dependent on the fertilizer industries which are heavily dependent on crude oil. So it will actually give us time to upgrade the technologies, to upgrade the various facilities which are there at the fertilizer sector, right? To transition gradually to the ethanol based production of the fertilizers too, right? So this has been a very clever decision. Now in fact, all of you are aspirants right now who will be becoming bureaucrats tomorrow. All of you will be taking these decisions tomorrow. So this is how we have to be highly aware as of now. Next, when we talk about the third reason, the government of India has noticed that the sugar mills, right, who are mandated to file some P2 forms which are to be filed online on 10th of every month, the government is expecting that some of the mills are not declaring the sugarcane stocks fully. This means, if you can simply understand, that the farmers, they supply their produce to the sugarcane mills, right? And when we talk about the mills, they actually try to distribute the same to the markets and also to the ethanol factories and so on. Now the mills are actually not filing the returns on time, which they have to do on an online basis. Now the government is suspecting that maybe they are hoarding the sugar in their own godowns, because the mills which are privately owned, sometimes they also can hope for higher rise in sugarcane prices in the future. Then they will try to release these kind of stocks which they have illegally tried to accumulate in their godowns, right? So this means that the government is also suspecting black marketing, hoarding, which is also illegalized under the Essential Commodities Act. So this is also one of the main reasons why the government of India has taken this decision. Now when we talk about the other concerns also, so firstly, when we talk about the sugarcane production, right, there is a trilemma in the country regarding sugar. Firstly, we have to ensure that enough sugar is available domestically, because if there is a shortfall due to El Nino, due to various other reasons, that means domestically the inflation can go up. The second trilemma is the ethanol blending program. You know, when we talk about ethanol production, which is actually blended with petrol, now here we are talking about energy security. That means that if we try to blend more ethanol with petrol, we will be requiring less amount of crude oil imports from other countries, right? This means India can actually save a lot of dollar on reducing its fossil fuel dependence from other countries. So this is where we are trying to assure that we are having energy security. But when we talk about this ethanol production, the ethanol production is possible only due to sugarcane crops. Now sugarcane crops, is a dual product. It is a civilian product. I mean, we in our daily lives we use sugar. It is very useful for our domestic consumption. Also, it is useful for energy security. So there is a huge dilemma for the government as to whether we will go for food security or energy security. So if we are trying to reduce the amount of sugar which we will be able to export it, we can use the export sugar also for energy security purpose. So both food security, which is here, and inflation management, and also energy security can be taken care of, right? So far the picture looks good. Also, when we talk about the sugarcane mills, in the country the sugarcane mills have long complained that since fair and remunerative price is a legal guarantee that the government will be paying the sugarcane farmers a fixed price. So the government of India actually indirectly pays the FRP to the sugarcane farmers. How? The government of India tells the sugarcane mills that okay, you purchase the sugarcane from the farmers directly, you pay the farmers. That means the mills are actually paying the farmers for the FRP, right? And sometimes some of the state governments have their own state administered prices, which are sometimes even higher than FRP. So what I'm trying to say is that mainly the payment burden of the sugar to the sugarcane farmers is actually on the mills. And later the government of India and the various state governments, they try to compensate the mills directly. But the mills in India is complaining that they are not receiving the payments on time that they had made previously to the farmers. So they have a lot of arrears. Arrears means accumulated payments which are not yet paid to them. And in fact, they are actually staring at losses. Now on the other hand, when we talk about the huge amount of water which is used in sugarcane, that is also a type of concern, because when we talk about ethanol production, over 1000 crore liters of water is required, due to which Tony Allen, a noted policymaker, economist, has actually framed a term for this. It is known as virtual water trade, because if in India we are using a lot of water for sugarcane cultivation and then we are exporting, we are actually indirectly exporting water too, because for 1 kg of sugar we require around 2500 liters of water. In fact, in Maharashtra you can understand that 4% of the crop area is belonging, right, to sugarcane, for example, but it is roughly consuming 70% of irrigation water. Just try to understand that. Also, at the World Trade Organization, there is this agreement on agriculture, which is trying to restrict the amount of subsidies that a national government is giving to their farmers. So you know that India has always faced criticism at the WTO, because since we give so many amount of MSPs and FRP to the various crops and sugarcane in the country, the other countries complain that the major amount of agricultural produce from the country is at a very cheaper rate. So other countries cannot compete with India on a very good level. So it has always been a concern, and that is why this export ban will be decreasing the supply of Indian sugar in the markets, in the international markets. That is why some of the countries can actually complain less about India as of now. But we have to also keep in mind that export ban as of now is a temporary measure. Now, understand the main maths behind this ban. Firstly, it is not that India is always not allowing sugar export. In fact, Indian government had actually allocated around 15 lakh tons for export. It added 5 lakhs more later on, right? So it becomes 20 lakh tons, and already out of this 6 tons have been shipped. So this means that as of now, the total exports of sugar will be around 6.5 lakh tons as of now, right? But this ban on the export of sugar will also may not matter too much for domestic supply of sugar too, right? Because as of now, both considering in mind the closing stock and the domestic consumption per month, we have enough sugar in the country to cover 1.8 months of domestic use. Now you will ask me, sir, what will happen after 1.8 months? Then we will have a new sugarcane cropping season, right? Then we will be trying to cultivate and harvest more sugarcane crops. So from that we will be having enough sugarcane also. And this is exactly where the government of India is concerned, that in the upcoming future sugarcane cycles, maybe due to El Nino, we can have some, deficient rainfall. This is exactly why the domestic supply must be kept secured. Right? Now there is another reason why this ban was still imposed. If you look at the prices of sugar, the market prices of sugar in the states of Maharashtra, UP, right? You see that the prices are actually quite higher than the export price of white and raw sugar. So it means that already the market prices are higher than the export price. You can understand the global prices of sugar are actually quite lower. And if Indian farmers and the mills, the sugar mills, they try to export the sugar right now, they can face some losses, right? Because already they can sell at a higher price in the domestic market. Why they will be exporting it, right? Sometimes the higher prices can also be due to heavy amount of fertilizer costs. So there can be multiple amount of losses. This is exactly as of now we have tried to ban the export as a precautionary policy. If you understand, as of now, whatever we have discussed, these are all kind of predictions, right? So this is why we also have to take concrete way forward and make better predictions. Firstly, we have to rationalize the cane pricing according to Rangarajan formula, which is trying to address the various fertilizer costs and the various other costs of the farmers in a concrete amount of formula which will be compensating the farmers. Next, instead of a complete ban, the Indian government can also go for calibrated export duties. This means that as of now, if the government of India sees that in the upcoming 1 month or 2 months, the sugarcane crops or the sugar stock is declining over a period of time, according to the levels of the domestic stocks, we can impose various limits and duties. So if we have the least amount of sugarcane crops, then we have the highest amount of export duties. Also, if you understand, sugarcane is already a water guzzling crop, so we need better amount of micro irrigation, plus also crop diversity, plus also various amounts of crop rotation practices. Then we also have to accelerate the ethanol blending program. In fact, we have to go to higher and advanced versions of ethanol blending technologies. We have to go towards utilizing the algae, utilizing the GM crops for sugarcane production also, because we also have to keep food security in mind. And that is where we also have to come up with better technology with reference to flex fuel vehicles. These vehicles actually run well when we use petrol and blended petrol equivalently. And at the end of the day, we need to clear the dues of the sugarcane mills, because the liquidity or the money that they have with themselves are all times at lower levels. So that is why we need to clear their dues, because generally the state governments actually delay a lot of payments to them. And at the end of the day, we can use technology to actually monitor the sugarcane crops and the sugar levels at a real-time rate. Only when we have data in a real-time level, then only we can have better amount of monitoring and better amount of policy making. So Internet of Things, weight bridges, blockchain-based inventory tracking are the need of the hour. And at the end of the day, we have a mains practice question. So you can all practice this and let me know in the comments for future recommendations. Now we will be moving on to the next article, where this is focusing on the AI-focused global capability centers and how this is giving a very stiff competition to our traditional IT services. When we talk about our IT sector, we instantly remember about the BPOs that we have, right? About the various call centers that we have, about the various companies like TCS, Infosys, and definitely no one can forget Narayana Murthy, right? In the comment section you can let me know why. But nevertheless, we have a very highly developed IT sector in the country. The main operation, or say the business model of these IT sector companies, are that it tries to actually take various projects from other companies, or generally we use the term known as outsourcing, right? This means that, for example, if Google has one requirement such as payment of salaries to Google's employees. Now this is a very huge task. So what Google will be doing? Google will be talking to TCS. It will be telling that, okay, TCS, you take care of all the salary payments and the HR models on your behalf. So TCS will be taking this project. TCS will be taking this operation. So when TCS has taken this operation, it means that TCS has actually tried to take the outsourced operations of Google, right? That means that Google, while it is sitting in US, it is outsourcing its salary and the HR models to TCS, right? Now, global capability centers are not like this. They are totally different. Now, when we talk about this particular topic, we have to analyze it from the perspective of GS1, 2 and 3. So firstly, global capability centers, they are very different from these traditional IT companies in the way that these companies will be setting up their subsidiaries or their branches or their sub-centers directly in India. So for example, if Google earlier had delineated that particular service to TCS, right now, if Google will be setting up its, say, some of its offices in the country itself, it won't be doing it, or it won't be giving the operations to the TCS directly. It will be managing on its own behalf. So this is actually what we mean as global capability center, where it is an in-house captive unit which is set up in India, for example, to handle strategic work for that company. So earlier, if there were TCS, if there were Infosys, Wipro, and various other companies, consultancy companies, which were taking the responsibilities of various world major companies, right now what the other companies will be doing, such as Microsoft, Amazon, JP Morgan, Deloitte, all have planned to set up their own centers in India itself. And this has not happened just now in this last year or the last 5 years. This has actually taken since 1990s. It actually took place, for example, when some companies such as Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they try to give some low skill, low cost operations to companies such as IT companies in India, right? Such as data entry, IT operations, call centers, HR operations, right? Then these major companies, they moved on to delivery engines. They moved on to software testing, development, and gradually, with the advent of AI, semiconductor chip design, and various amounts of other kind of productions, we have seen how the major companies, they are directly coming into India. They are not setting up ties with major IT companies. They are actually trying to have their own set of institutions and strategic outcomes in India itself. That means when we talk about for example, JP Morgan setting up its own office in Bengaluru, right? It will be having its own employees, doing its own IT work, right? And this is how the country's employment structure, skill development, tax revenue can be benefited. Because here, if more and more companies come to India, they will be employing more labor, more people, and they will be bringing in new technologies, contributing to higher revenues for the government of India, right? So that means that over a period of time, the number of GCCs in India has increased. If you just go back 5 years before, we had only 1,600 GCCs. As of now, we have more than 2,000, right? This is around 32% growth. Also, when we look at the amount of professionals employed, there are more than 2.36 million people working, right? Also, it is generating around $98.4 billion in form of tax revenues for the Indian government, especially in case of this West Asian conflict and the declining amount of forex reserves. Any kind of increase in tax revenues are actually helpful for the government at the end of the day. Also, when we talk about these global capability centers, Most of them are focused on one technology, that is artificial intelligence and machine learning. If you see, more than 1,200 of them are actually involved in this AI focused growth, AI focused data centers. If you see, as of now, there are so many companies, also Indian IT companies, which are coming up with big AI data centers. Now this has to be kept in mind that global capability centers and AI data centers, they are not same exactly, but one global capability center of a company, for example say Nvidia or Google, they can set up data centers in India itself. So you can understand that GCC is a very broad term. Data center is just one of them, one of the functions that can be of the GCCs. So if you see Amazon, Google, Microsoft, also Indian companies like Reliance and Adani, they're coming up with more and more data centers. Most of them are focused in Mumbai, Chennai, and even a recent one set up in Noida. They have various concerns, such as they require a lot of water, because AI requires around 25 million liters of water per year, with reference to this new amount of data centers, right? So even 1 megawatt data center will be requiring huge amount of water. They will be requiring huge amount of energy. Also, at the end of the day, we have to keep in major benefits for the jobs and the real estate sector that will be taking place. At the end of the day, there are also concerns that these huge data centers, which will be taking a huge amount of land, they can also displace some communities, but we have to keep in mind, we have to do it lawfully and legally, and at the end of the day, they will be creating more jobs, both low skill jobs and high skill jobs. So these is the magic of the GCCs, right? They will be leading to more amount of AI professionals in the future, to the tune of more than 2.5 lakh persons. And India can become world's second largest AI talent pool. So this means that this kind of global capability centers will be doing actually more good in the country than actually what the IT services have done so far in the previous years, right? No doubt that the IT sector companies have actually led the service growth in the country. So the global capability centers will be actually taking this to the next level. Because at the end of the day, we have to keep in mind that the traditional IT firms, these were third-party vendors, right? We have just discussed this as an example, taking the case of Google and the HR operations. So you can actually understand, if Google is setting up its own unit in India, right? So that will be part of the MNC, that is Google itself, or Goldman Sachs, or Boeing India itself in India, right? So this will be also be helping to reduce the cost of doing business in India, because earlier these traditional IT companies used to charge these big companies per hour. Right now they will be setting up in India itself. They will be having its own cost reduction, right? For example, they can come up with their own AI technology, research and development, which are sometimes, heavily patented. And these kind of patents, they do not share with the traditional IT companies. So if they come in India, we can have better amount of technologies in India over a period of time. We can have specialized domain hiring in India. And this hiring environment in India can lead to better amount of skilled workforce, can lead to higher salaries in India, right? And also, at the end of the day, the main amount of strategic decisions of these global capability centers, they will be made in India itself, right? But when we talk about the IT companies which actually took their projects, they were only tasked with the projects, deadlines, completion, meetings, and all those things. And this is where the GCCs can actually take the stage in India of the IT sector to the next level as of now. And that is why over a period of time, the government of India has so many laws and policies for the growth of the GCC in the country. Firstly, we have to talk about the IT Act, which is the main backbone of the IT infrastructure in the country. Then we also have the special economic zones, where there are so many special zones in various states of the country which are set up, where these kind of IT companies, then they can go there and operate at highly low cost. Apart from that, a very related scheme is there known as the Software Technological Parks of India, where the various companies have their own software export units in various states of the country, even in various mega cities such as Bengaluru, Hyderabad and Delhi, Kolkata, where they actually take benefits of low amount of land rates, electricity supplies and so on. Also, we have the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, and this is India's first data privacy law, which also mandates the strict amount of regulation of data that must be stored in the country itself, or if it is stored abroad, it has to be doing along with some proper regulations and norms. Also, we have the National Data Governance Policy and Framework, where we have so many data regarding the data centers, AI, machine learning. They must be having proper regulation and even cloud storage rules. Next, we have the India AI mission. This is a mega mission where India will be procuring the graphical processing units from various companies such as Nvidia, and they will be delineating them to various Indian startups and Indian IT companies so that we can have our own AI development. We can have our own AI research and development, where these GCCs can also take help of this particular GPUs and their own AI developmental aspirations. Also, we have the semiconductor mission, which is actually trying to have our own semiconductor fabrication and manufacturing and design in India itself. And at the end of the day, several states are also coming up with various GCC policies. So at the macro level, what will all these culminate as benefits for India? Firstly, we can earn more foreign exchange reserves, right? So that we have already seen via revenues, Indian government can actually be benefited. Also, the real estate sector, particularly in cities such as Bengaluru, Hyderabad, can actually be benefited from this. Especially if you look at Bengaluru and Hyderabad after COVID pandemic, the real estate sector actually have gone down, and this can actually be lifted as of now. Also, when we talk about the GCCs, they will be taking highly skilled labor, and this can lead to better amount of skills. This can lead to higher amount of global value integration of Indian workforce into the global value chains such as AI, machine learning and all of them. And this can lead to broader amount of innovation in the country by better amount of patents, better research and development, and this can bring best practices in India too. And at the end of the day, all of the countries are actually moving away from China. So they are following China plus one strategy. So those companies also can be attracted in India. And India is also kind of lessening its dependence on US and China's technology, especially after the tariff situation that we have seen in the last year. So this decoupling that India is trying to do from US and Chinese technology, these can have better amount of benefits for the GCCs that will be setting up in India directly. Despite that, we definitely have some issues. Firstly, and this is a very major issue, let me tell you, that most of the GCCs which are setting up in India or which will be setting up in India, they do not have, true independence with reference to taking some decisions in leadership roles. This means that most of the companies with reference to GCCs which are setting up in India, most of the decisions, the leadership roles are still situated in the US or in their mother companies or in their mother countries. This means that for India to be truly a global leader, we have to actually talk to the GCCs and tell about giving more leadership roles in the Indian GCCs itself, right? Also, when we talk about the GCCs and the Indian IT sector, we only hear about, Bengaluru, Hyderabad and Pune, right? So definitely we need more tier 2 cities and tier 3 cities to come up with more GCCs, to come up with more special economic zones and software technology parks. Also, the AI automation right now, which is creating mass layoffs in not only the entire world but also in India, it is actually threatening this kind of jobs. So the experts are actually opining that the GCCs must be creating more opportunity for the people who are losing their jobs due to AI automation. Also, there is a risk of brain drain because the GCCs operate on a global model, right? For example, say if they find that out of say 100 employees, 50 employees are highly skilled, they are very brilliant. So what they will do, they will be sending this 50 of us to their leadership positions in the US itself, and that is exactly why we demand most of the leadership roles to be also coming in India too. Now, when we talk about other issues, we have infrastructural issues in various Indian states, right? We have the lack of proper electricity, sanitation, which is, a very major red flag for this kind of GCCs. Next, we have various H-1B visa restrictions due to Mr. Trump, right? Also, there are heavy amount of skill mismatches on AI infrastructure, on machine learning infrastructure in India. This is what actually the India AI mission is trying to address. And at the end of the day, the IP ownership is a very big concern because all of the major research and development which these GCCs will be doing in India, they will be trying to take away this patent and the IP ownership back to their own country. So looking at all these issues, now we have to come up with some solutions. So the perfect way forward is that, firstly, we have to give tax benefits and even much more land benefits to the GCCs to come up with global leadership in India to prevent brain drain in the country. Also, we have to give them more benefits to set up in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities so that more people from these areas get job. Also, we have to accelerate the India AI mission. We have to start procuring heavy amount of GPUs and delineate them to India-based data centers and also use startups to leverage the benefits of AI. Further, the curriculum at our IITs, at our schools, and at our various universities, they must be redefined to reduce the amount of AI skill mismatch that we have in the country. Also, various experts recommend that we have to track the amount of job displacement and the mass layoffs which are happening. And that is why we have to get the data and we have to present the data to the new GCCs which are set up so that the labor pool can be utilized and the unemployment rate in India can be reduced. Also, we have to actually register all the Indian origin innovations in India itself so that the main amount of patent benefits and the research and development benefits, they accrue to Indians and not to the foreigners who take away the patent rights from India. Also, at the end of the day, we have to set up negotiations and diplomatic councils with major countries from where these GCCs are coming from and have better agreements on the movement of Indians to their nations and also movement of their people to India, so that we have a better amount of mobility of people, of good professionals, of best AI professionals and also various other technology professionals between the countries, so that these visa restrictions do not come in the way of this GCC infrastructure in the country. So that is where it brings me to this mains question again. So let me have the answer in the comments below. Now we will be moving on to the prelims pointers. So guys, India's seafood industry got a very major boost because recently India was re-included in EU's list of countries which can export seafood to EU. Right? So this is a very major development which has actually taken place in the sector of aquaculture in India. Now, when we understand the significance of European Union, we can simply understand the numbers here. So, with reference to aquaculture, which European Union defines to be covering finfish products and crustaceans. For example, European Union is actually having a legal definition of aquaculture where fish such as tilapia, milkfish, even eels are included as finfish. Or their products such as roes and caviar, and crustaceans such as shrimp, prawn, crab, lobster, all of them are included under aquaculture. So, looking at the market here, EU is India's third largest aquaculture market, attributing to around $1.6 billion, attributing to around 19% of India's total seafood export, which is growing at 41% approximately over a period of time, if you can see. So the growth is a very major one. Now, we have to understand that If India is re-included in this list right now, why it was excluded before? Now this is where you have to keep in mind that some organizations, countries, and even European Union, they have extremely high standards for various food products or any kind of items that they import into their own country. For example, if they are importing some variety of tilapia fish, so they would look into detailed data of where the fish came from, right? Its origin, or the various ponds from where they came from. In fact, the government of India should be keeping details of each and every record. The details of this record should be submitted to the EU so that they can actually find out that what were the growing conditions, what were the various feed stock that were given to the fish, in which conditions, also what are the types of antimicrobial medicines which are given to the fish for their overall development. So we got to know that in the eyes of European Union and some of the developed countries, food quality is very important, right? So that is why they have so many high standards there. Now take the case of Indian seafood industry, which was actually banned from exports earlier. The reason why they were banned was due to the presence of antimicrobial resistance. This was also covered before in the Analyst, but let me try to summarize it. When we go to the doctor for some simple cold, for some fever, we take some medicines and the doctor tells that okay, you have it for 5 days. But what we do, we have it only for 1 day or 2 days, because by 2 days our fever has gone. But you have to keep in mind that we have to complete the entire dosage properly, right? And also some medicines are only fit for human consumption, they are not fit for animal consumption. But what the major aquaculture farmers they do, they try to take all the different species in one single high density aquaculture pond. And this is how diseases spread very rapidly. So most of the fish and the various other fish products that we see in the markets, they can suffer from antimicrobial resistance. This means that this fish will have those dangerous bacteria, those dangerous pathogens, which are totally resistant to those medicines which the aquaculture farmers have fed in the fish ponds. And sometimes I have already told that these medicines are not fit for their consumption because they are of human consumption. So that is why for prelims, please keep in mind that the government of India has come up with National Residue Control Plan. This is a plan to control the amount of pesticide residue or antimicrobial residue in the fish or the aquaculture products of our country, so that they can actually be very ready-made for the EU exports. So that is why, as of now, the microbials cannot be used in livestock merely for growth or yield purposes, because mainly the antimicrobials which the aqua farmers they give to the fish is for more amount of fish production, right? Also, animals intended for human consumptions cannot be treated with human medicines. So these are the strict rules which we are following right now. And for your own knowledge and practice for prelims, please solve this 2019 question where we are talking about the basics of multi-drug resistance in microbial pathogens in India, right? So you can take the help of this figure for your reference and let me know the answer in the comments. But when we talk about the re-inclusion of India in EU's list again, this is how, the confidence of EU in India's regulatory system has improved over a period of time, because India has this National Residue Control Plan, and this is one of the major initiatives that the government of India has taken to boost our fisheries sector. Apart from this, we also have so many other government schemes in the fisheries sector. For example, the Blue Revolution scheme, the National Marine Fisheries Policy, the Fisheries and Aquaculture Infrastructure Development Fund with around 7,500 crore corpus. Also, the Kisan Credit Card facilities also has been extended to the fish farmers here, right? Exclusive department for fisheries has been created at various state governments. Separate fisheries ministry has been created. So the European Union is right now regaining confidence. Also, Since India is actually signing to various global sanitary and phytosanitary measures, the European Union regulators are also happy with us, right? Because we are taking so many standards to ensure food quality, the less amount of pesticide residue, medicine residue in our food products. And this is where we can also understand that this particular re-inclusion of India into the European Union's list can safeguard the livelihoods of the farmers too. And at the end of the day, more countries can accept this signal and try to accept Indian seafood products again, which will benefit the coastal states such as Gujarat, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and so on. So now we will be moving on to the next article, where we will be having a look into the 2025 Periodic Labor Force Survey. In the comment section, immediately let me know who releases this report in the country, and we will be having a look into this annual PLFS report as of now. Before that, let us keep some of the basics in mind. So, this report is firstly focusing on achieving India's big opportunity in the coming decades, that is our demographic dividend. For example, say, when we talk about various other countries such as Japan, it already had its demographic dividend, or the opportunity of the population of the country to contribute positively to GDP, because most of the population, when a country is having its demographic dividend, will be in working age population. They can contribute positively to our national growth, right? That means that in simple terms, that a country with good amount of demographic dividend will have more younger and able population for working. But Japan already exhausted that in 2004. Italy did in 2002. South Korea will be doing very soon in 2027. That means very soon South Korea will be having a decline in the young and working age population with more aging population, right? Also, when we talk about China, China will be having its demographic dividend up to only around 5 years from now. Thailand is also on the same level. Brazil is also on the same level. But when we talk about India, for us, the opportunity started just in 2018, and it will be lasting way into the future, into say around 2040s and even 2050s. That means that as of now, we have a good amount of population which is actually having young and working capabilities, right? And that is exactly why we have to keep in mind that these decades of 20s and the 30s and the 40s will be highly important to improve the labor force in the country. According to this 2025 PLFS report, the labor force participation rate is 59%. But who all are in the labor force? That is what UPSC will be testing you in the prelims. So, for your basics, please keep in mind that not all of the population is included in the labor force. So, there will be population, who are actually beyond working age, who are actually retired, right? Who are also, young. For example, the children, they're not included in the labor force. Also, there will be some super rich people who will not be working. Some people, they can tell that I'm not interested in working at all, right? They do not want any job. So they also won't be included. That means some people who are not willing to work, they will not be included in the labor force. So only people who are working or seeking work, that means people sometimes can also be unemployed, they only are included in the labor force. And labor force participation rate is nothing but the total amount of people who are working and seeking work divided by the population into 100. Also, when we talk about the worker participation rate, this is the total number of employed people to the population. And at the end of the day, when we talk about the unemployment rate, this is simply the total number of unemployed people divided by the labor force. Now, why am I telling all of this in extreme basics? Because UPSC loves testing you extreme basic concepts in economics. Also, over a period of time, we have seen how they are also focusing on numericals right now. So that is why such formulas are very important. Now let us look into some of the positive reports from this PLFS 2025. Firstly, we see that the youth unemployment rate is falling over a period of time, which is a good signal because more of the youth possibly are getting better jobs. Next, when we talk about women labor participation rate, this is also getting improvement over a period of time, because when we talk about the earnings of the women in the country with reference to regular work, casual labor and self-employment, the earnings have improved. But we have to keep in mind, still there is a gap between the earnings of women and men. In salaried work, the gap is 76%. Just keep that in mind. In casual labor, that is 69%. In self-employment, that is 36%. That means while women are getting more jobs, they are not getting equal payments. Also, the wages are improving over a period of time for women. The next positive thing that also will be very important for the mains is that recently there is a shift towards regular salary jobs apart from self-employment opportunities. That means more people are getting full-time opportunities. Full-time opportunities give you PF benefits, Provident Fund, employment state insurance, paid leave, gratuity. So salaried employment is much more predictable. It is much more better over a period of time, right? And at the end of the day, in India, we are also seeing a structural transformation because the share of agriculture is going down, or the amount of people who are employed in the agriculture industries, they are getting down. And this is a good signal. Why? Because the employment in the manufacturing sector and the services sector, they are getting more improvement. That means traditional agriculture people are actually migrating to more tier 3 cities, tier 2 cities and tier 1 and metropolitan areas to get jobs in the manufacturing sector and the servicing sector, which is a good signal for India. But still there are some challenges. Firstly, the education to employment mismatch due to the major lack of skill is still there, because only 4% Indians within the age group of 15 to 59 years received vocational training. And this is exactly why from 2004 to 2023, 5 million people, 5 million workforce have increased, but only 2.8 million people got jobs, right? Also, the women workforce face various concerns because the time spent on unpaid work is very high for women. So mainly they are contributing to non-economic activities such as homemakers, caregivers. So their contribution is not at all factored into, right? Our GDP is not calculating the amount of labor that the woman is spending in their childcare, in various other facilities. Apart from that, we have some safety concerns in various urban areas, transportation issues are there, even societal norms are still there which prevent women to go and work, right? Also, at the end of the day, this NEET preparation is a very big issue because around 25% of the youth who are in the age group of 15 to 29 years are spending their 20s in these NEET categories. And that is where recently, as you also have seen, due to the rumored paper leaks, the NEET examination is again rescheduled in the next month. So this means that these youth are actually not counted as unemployed. Also, on the other hand, we need proper Indian examination reforms, right? So this is what brings us to the end of this article. We'll now move on to the next one, where the main topic here is withholding tax, because the government is thinking of cutting the withholding tax in the near future for foreign investors. So to understand this topic, imagine that you are a very rich foreign investor who is thinking of buying a Government of India bond. So you come to India, you buy the Government of India bond, right? And the Government of India bond, for example, has a face value of 100 rupees. And it is giving you the interest or yield of say 10%, right? So how much you will be earning in 1 year? You will be earning 10 rupees after 1 year. Now what the Government of India has told, that since you are a foreign investor, you are a non-resident in the country, right? The government will automatically deduct say 20% of this interest. So how much is it? Say 2 rupees. So at the end of the day, how much you will be getting? You will be getting 8 rupees as return, and 2 rupees will be deducted as taxes. And you know, as investors, you never would like any kind of taxes. You never would like high amount of taxes. In fact, 20% withholding tax was a problem for India. And as of now, this rate is at 20%, which is actually eating up into the real returns for the investors. And if you can look into the global comparisons, China has 10%, but as of now it is giving a complete amount of, say, discount or exemptions to investors for investing in their government bonds. Also look at Vietnam, they are having 5%. Look at Malaysia, they are having 0%. So that is why the Indian government is thinking to reduce it to around 10% or even at 5%. So this will actually attract a lot of foreign investment in the government bonds, right? And this is very important for us at this stage right now, because as of now there is a massive capital flight. This means that foreign investors who participate in Indian stock markets, Indian bond markets, they are actually leaving India. What they're doing? They are dumping Indian rupees in the market. They're taking their money and they're going back to their countries. In fact, in the last few months, right, $22.5 billion have left India simply because the US Fed rates or the US central bank's rates are actually quite higher. So investors are telling, why I will remain in India, especially during these conflict situations. Let me take my money back into the US. Right? And this is why the capital flight is happening right now, right? And this is actually leading to a lot of rupees to be dumped in the Indian market, right? And this is why one of the main reasons the rupee is almost touching 100 rupees into $1, right? Rupee is severely depreciating right now. And in fact, it has fallen by 11% against the dollar in 1 year. And all of these are depleting the forex reserves of our country, because in the 2 months itself, our forex reserve has dropped by around $38 billion, right? And that is exactly why some of the experts are actually telling to cut the withholding tax so that more foreign investors will come and invest in our Indian government bonds. So it will actually support and bring more forex reserves, right? And reduce the pressure on Indian rupee, because simply if the foreign investors come, they will be coming with dollars and they will be converting it into Indian rupee, which will be actually be increasing the demand of our Indian rupee, leading to rupee appreciation. So this will also reduce the rupee pressure in India. Also, at the end of the day, the policy makers are also debating that we should also not try to decrease this tax. Why? Because maybe they are telling that foreign investors will not come immediately, because as of now, due to the West Asian conflict, the matters are still very intense. Investors may not come right now. And also, as of now, if we are seeing so much amount of capital flight, plus the forex reserves which are actually be depleting right now, the various international investors and the rating agencies, they are closely monitoring India's position. Maybe in the future, they can give a bad outlook for India. So many investors also waiting for what will happen in the next 5-6 months, right? So this means that there are both positives and negatives for this rate cut. But according to most of the economists, we should go ahead with it. Firstly, because major international companies and also countries are interested to come to India to invest in our bond market. Secondly, if you look at China, Vietnam, Malaysia, they are having lower tax rates, even at 0%, because investors must not be taxed specifically under these conditions. And thirdly, we have to reduce the pressure on our INR, that is the Indian currency. So this was all for this one. Let us move on to the next one. The central government will be procuring 2 lakh tons of onions. This is a very significant policy move because in Nasik, the farmers are worried about crop infection. Farmers are selling in Nasik various sacks of onions at losses. And this is exactly how the architecture has been designed in such a way that NAFED will be procuring 1 lakh tons from the farmers. NCCF will be also procuring the remaining 1 lakh ton and will be distributing to the customers. Central Warehousing Corporation will be storing the onions, and at the end of the day there are 2 digital portals where the farmers can go and enlist their grade A onions. So when we look into the entire process, if you see here, it's a partnership between NAFED and NCCF, right? So the storage will be at around 20 godowns across India, where the farmers can register on this Samyukti and e-Samruddhi portals, right? So here pre-sorted onions will be stored at the CWC warehouse, and only grade A onions will be accepted after quality verification, and the farmers will be getting the money in their bank accounts in the form of direct benefit transfer, that is directly into their bank accounts, right? Now let us actually look into the 2 cooperative bodies which will be handling this particular mechanism. Now, firstly we have the NAFED, which was established in 1958. Their main function is to procure oil seeds, pulses and copra at MSP under the price stabilization scheme. Also, it looks into the various market intervention schemes as to sometimes the onion prices, for example here, is supposed to crash, supposed to go down, right? And this is why, the NAFED can actually take various procurement policies based on the Government of India decisions. So it is under the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. Now on the other hand, we have the National Cooperatives Consumers Federation of India, which is actually looking into the consumer interest and mainly looking into supply of various agricultural commodities and various other commodities into the wholesale and the retail markets, where they can also have the function of direct procurement, as you can see in this case. But it has to be noted, they are not under the Ministry of Agriculture. They are under the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution. Now, how this procurement will be done? It will be done via the minimum assured procurement price. This means that this is a combination of the maximum price of the onions at the markets plus your average of the prices over the last 3 days. So this is the price which is better than market price because it reflects the true market data. Now, the main aim here is to have the price stabilization of the onions in the market. And the main fund that the Government of India will be using will be from the price stabilization fund, right? For example, here, what the government will be noticing is that in this April to June period, where this is the bust period, where the demand of the onions in the market will not be that high, because here the onions will be just harvested after the Rabi cycle and supply will be enough in the markets, right? So right now the NAFED and the NCCF will be focusing on building a buffer stock. But the main situation can actually come in the future, that is in the months of September to November, when the onion crop will not be cultivated. But we have to depend on the buffer stocks right now. So that is why right now the 2 lakh tons is being procured way in advance. So the Government of India told that there must be a minimum recovery rate of 70%. That means if 100 kg of onions are procured, 72 kgs must be kept in proper conditions. They cannot be wasted. That means 28 kgs can be wasted, but we have to minimize the losses. So we are actually taking good measures well in advance before the prices crash, to reward the farmers suitably and also to monitor the consumer prices at the end level to prevent inflation in the future during the months of September to October. So this was all for this one. Now on to the last article, where we will see why the wholesale price index in India has more than doubled in the month of April. Now the rate of wholesale price index in India as of now is 8.3%, which is quite significant. But before that, let us look into some of the basics of WPI. WPI, the wholesale price index, tracks prices at the wholesale level, as you can see here. This is a wholesale market where we are seeing that there are so many food products or various other types of products across 3 categories are measured. For example, manufactured products having the highest weightage, such as textiles, chemicals, metals, machinery. Primary articles having the second highest weightage, which is consisting of food articles and also non-food articles. And finally, fuel and power, which is consisting of petrol, diesel, LPG and electricity. So what is measured here is that the Office of the Economic Advisor under DPIIT under the Ministry of Commerce and its officials go into major mandis, wholesale markets across the country. They look into the various prices and they have a base year of 2011-12, which will also be revised very soon, right? And they compare the prices month by month and year on year. And here on we get the inflation. So the main difference with CPI is that firstly, CPI recently, the base year has been revised to 2024. Also, in CPI, we have included the services too, such as education, transport, etc. In WPI, you have to keep in mind, we do not include services at all, right? And also, the number of goods also vary according to the CPI and the WPI. Right. Now, when we look into the main increase in the inflation as of now, if you see right now, since around 2023-24, right, the wholesale inflation has actually increased to this level, which is actually at a very, very high level. Now, one of the main reason is due to the rise in prices of the various amount of fossil fuels. Right now, as I'm speaking, the prices have been raised to 3 rupees per liter, even more. So in the future, you can witness even more inflation, right? So that is why at the wholesale level, prices of petrol, diesel, aviation turbine fuel, right, which has more than doubled, all have increased over a period of time. So if you see, mainly when we talk about the fuel items, also chemicals, they became expensive due to the West Asian crisis, due to the Iran conflict which is going on, right? And mainly the fuel and power has seen the biggest jump. While even the primary items such as onions, for example, which is facing a crisis right now, this is also kind of impacted. While the food products in the WPI did not see that amount of inflation, but the crash in the onion prices, which is say 50 paisa a kg right now, is actually one of the main concerns. Also, the experts are telling that there can be more second round impacts. For example, the first round impact is when the West Asian crisis took place, the Strait of Hormuz is blocked, simply the prices of petrol cylinders, they all went up. But the second round impact will be even much more worse, because if we see higher energy prices, this will lead to higher transport prices, production prices, business prices, and at the end of the day, consumers will be paying more. So we can see even more inflation in the near future. So actually this is what we have to keep in mind for the topic in general. And finally, all of you have to practice these two PYQs and also the PYQs which I have attached in the previous slides too, because practice makes perfect. And at the end of the day, I thank you all for being a very patient audience. This was a long discussion. I hope all of you enjoyed it. Please do attempt the quiz which is following up. And finally, till we meet again, all the best and best of luck. Thank you.